Welcome to Gift Webinar Series. Today is a very special day. We are going to have a seminar by our director, which is on an issue which has been widely discussed in the recent past. And moreover, he has been quite emphatic about reimagining the fiscal architecture in this country, and he has been making presentations or synopsis of the argument that he has been going to put forward. So the basic idea, I am sure you all know, because we have kind of heard the central thesis of this presentation earlier, if not the details. We are going to have a very exciting seminar today, and I request Abhilash to lower the temperature because we are going to heat up the seminar room. And I warmly welcome the chair of the day, Professor K.N. Harilal. Although he is extremely busy, he makes us feel that he's just one call away from us. Thank you, sir, for kindly agreeing to come and chair the session. I don't want to take much of your time. Before I hand over it to you, I welcome Professor Sri Kumar Chattopadhyaya for coming over, and all the other presenters, and my friend Subbu. Thank you for coming. And now I hand over this responsibility to our chair, Professor Harilal. Over to you, sir.
In fact, yesterday I had to remind Professor Joseph about the seminar today, and I was requesting him to send the paper or at least an abstract so that I can discuss the paper after the presentation. But then he sent the paper yesterday evening. I couldn't read the paper yesterday, but today morning I thought I'll read the introduction and conclusion because I had some other work also. And then I'll be able to say something about the paper after his presentation. But I read the introduction, then I got interested and then I read the paper. Full paper I read in the morning in one go because I found it very interesting and very timely, because the real issue he is raising, it's very familiar, old issue, as old as general theory days. The old paper of Richard Kahn, then Keynes, then John Robinson, so many people have written about this. And he is bringing that literature into the paper, but then he is giving a very interesting twist to the whole thing so that it's very relevant in the current context. So I read the paper with a lot of appetite, and I believe that it will be received that way. And today's discussion will certainly, if there are gaps, etc., in the paper that can be further improved. There are certainly areas where it can be improved or some useful additions can be made into the paper. So anyway, first of all, let us listen to Professor Joseph's presentation, and then we'll take up the whole thing for a discussion.
Good afternoon to all of you. Professor K.N. Harilal, Chairman, Kerala State 7th Finance Commission. Of course, coordinator of the program. Professor Sri Kumar Chattopadhyaya, friends of Gift joined online. I can see Bensley is a person who is very persuasive and always joining for our program. Nagashata and others. Devendra Babu, Sneha, Lini. And of course, my dear colleagues and my most beloved students. I will have a brief, before getting into the PowerPoint, I was actually thinking today morning, this is something to take away for all of you. You're all sharing some apartment together and staying nearby rooms. We did that thing. And we have shared a lot of personal things. He's not just my professional friend, he's my personal friend. We shared a lot of personal and I think stood by me in my difficult times. To the extent possible, I also did that same with him. And I never thought that, he'll ever, I will be listening, I will be having a chair session wherein chairman of Kerala State Finance Commission chairing the presentation. I think this is what is going to be happening to all of you. You all have the potential to do that. You all. Perhaps you are more competent than us. You are all more competent than us in many different ways. So you should be able to see your trajectory in a much better way than ours. That is one point which I wanted to make. Second thing is, this paper is actually, I benefited from quite many of my faculty colleagues. I don't want to use, I don't want to use the name. They all know whom all I reaped. I wanted to actually write this paper jointly with one of them. Then I couldn't do because this is a chapter in the forthcoming handbook. But then I could not join with anyone simply because I had not given any name, because all the other faculty members are contributing chapters. Then you cannot flood the handbook with the gift. So then I thought, okay, then let it be in my own way, because I acknowledge the contribution. Even yesterday, somebody sent me a slide, and tonight I discussed. And anyway, all of you have contributed. I thank you for all that. And I think the whole effort here is a collective effort of this paper. We are having an immense opportunity and at the same time a great challenge of articulating a developing country oriented public finance. The country today should be bothered so much about our deficit in that sphere rather than fiscal deficit. Unfortunately, just go to the slide, please. Upload the slide. Who will do that? So, unfortunately, we are concerned about things which are not ideally we should be concerned about. And this is the job of your generation. In another 5 years' time, we should make a mark in this country because we had a long discussion with Professor Harilal, some of the people whom we thought are actually really wonderful human beings, inadvertently, their influence in policy decisions happen to be so much perilous to the country. I don't think that they wanted to finish our country. They did it in good intention, but ultimately the outcome was not the way we wanted. So ultimately, I will also say that this seminar is in honor of Professor M.A. Umman, because I think I'm very much being kind of, it really, I not publicized it because I thought when I was reflecting about it, he is the senior most in our group. And I went and I sent the paper to him. He gave detailed comments. And I think this also, I take it as from someone. I have a very interesting thing to say. In 81, I went to Mathai Center in search of him for my MA. Then that year he left to Botswana. So I could not be, when he had an MA program, which was designed an MA program that he designed in 78 was in fact, no program today can match that what Mathai Center developed at that time. And we have actually slide down. So I thought this seminar, I think I'll put it in my respect to him. His respect is presented here. Now, okay, by way of some introduction, modern theory of public finance begins not with the ambitions of the state, but with the limits of the market. That is something which you should be knowing. Writing from the heartland of market in the US, Musgrave and Musgrave, they created the pillars of public finance, with the key functions of public finance in terms of allocation, distribution, and stabilization. Government is called upon because market, if it is left to itself, it is outcome that are determinate and indeterminate and predictable ways. It can be socially deficient. That is their basic premise on which, if you are left to if you leave it to market will provide public goods that fail to price externalities like defense, road, health, underprovided, because there's no private sector can fully appropriate the returns. So the allocative function of the state. Then comes the distribution. If you left unregulated, if you left to the market, whatever their efficiency, you know that Adam Smith talking about, it is not from the altruism that you, of the butcher or the baker, this. So if you leave to market, that will tend to concentrate, they will be leading to concentration of income and wealth, which no society will be able to accept, and it will not be fair to any society. So that needs the distribution function and the other related things. Finally, the stabilization. In market economies, we left to their own devices. They are prone to cycles and boom and bust. 1930s, the experience was very fresh, even at that time in the minds of economists. So the three important functions of public finance. So the state is not an intruder upon the economy, but a constitutive condition of its functioning, an agency through which a society supplies what the market will not and cannot. That is where we talk about public finance now. If you go by, you are familiar with the Wagner's law. Economic history teaches us that as an economy develops, the role of the state do not diminish. Instead, it increases. Measured in terms of, if you define the role of the state in terms of public expenditure as a proportion of GDP, the size of the government in advanced economies, so for example, if you take, for example, it ranges from 40 to over 50%. This is well shown by a recent paper by Professor, the chairman of the session, in a reputable article by Shaijan, Professor Harilal, Shaijan, and Nirmal. They have shown that if you take, say, for example, in the case of France, it is as high as 50 or about 60%. I was telling and in UK, US, in Belgium, 47%, it is way above what the developing countries are having. So what this figure records is not, it is a pattern, it's not an aberration. It's not an aberration. These four countries are not an aberration. It is a pattern. As production, population, and activity agglomerated, demand for public goods and coordination grew faster than the economy itself, and the government sector outgrew the non-governmental sector. This is what the experience shows. But when you are coming to Indian context, what we see, the size of the Indian government remained, according to this, again, I'm drawing from their own paper, around 6% for almost a century. And after the economy achieved independence, it started increasing. And after globalization, it reached almost something like 28%. And by 2020, it's almost 28%. Thereafter, it has not moved an inch forward. Rather, it has declined. Last 20 years, we have seen that the share of the state almost remains stagnant, or if at all, has declined. So this is what they call it as bonsaization of the state. In fact, I would like to rather call it as premature state withdrawal. Even before you reach a certain level of development, even when many of your people are going hungry, the state is withdrawing. And we have got instances wherein national agencies like Niti Aayog praising such states like Odisha, where they are fiscally prudent, they are fiscally healthy, but 27 out of 30 districts, these children, according to the latest NFHS survey, these children are confronted with stunting. In fact, the study, Suma and others, we have used this evidence. So this is contracting the state before rather than after development has been secured. This is the challenge that we are. Now, this is the, okay, now. So we have a riddle here. There's a riddle at the heart of India's development strategy. We are today talking about a destination of 2047, Agenda 2047, making India a developed economy, 30 trillion economy by the centenary of independence. Niti Aayog upholds it. And what is the route? The route to this route, which is proposed in this route, is reaching it with the state not in the leading role, but state taking a back seat. But history teaches us that no country ever has managed to reach this kind of a developed economy status by state taking a back seat. Now, the question which ponders all of us, and it is crucial for you, the so-called Gen Z, is can India arrive at the development destination by the one route no predecessor had traveled? Perhaps we may be able to do that. I don't know whether we will be able to, this kind of a route, we may be able to create another history, perhaps. Now, why we have been able to? What is the underlying, when you look into this question, inquiry will be leading nowhere but to the fiscal rules that govern the country. And we articulate this particular format of the fiscal rule, particularly the FRBM that we have here. The extent to which the state can finance developmental transformation is contingent on that is contingent on the rules that it governs by way of your borrowing, your spending, and revenue. And we can articulate that in two ways. One in a kind of rules which are more curative in nature, other one in terms of preventive in nature. We are inclined to argue that the kind of FRBM framework that we have been following is, after committing a mistake, you permit the state to reach a particular level, whatever, then you try to control. Okay, you should remedial fiscal excesses after it is being committed. You have to, the numerical deficit ceiling as a single instrument, which I'll come back, that, then calibrated for, and what is this? This is something evolved in the context of developed economies, and we are using it. And the key aspect of it is capital and revenue expenditure are expenditure, state expenditure. This is almost identical. But on the other hand, if you articulate the preventive approach, you will be building structural fiscal capacity ahead of need through your revenue. Your targets will be, okay, our revenue target should be this much. Are we reaching our revenue? In this country, we know that your tax GDP ratio was something like 9%, and that has reached a peak of something like 16% by 1986. After that, we have got so many reforms, and we have got import relaxation, for which 2% of the excise of the customs duty lost. And after liberalization, our tax GDP ratio has just moved by 2%. So now we will be working through your, you will be working through in a preventive approach. Your strategy should be aim at expenditure rationalization, efficiency in expenditure, and all these, and making the investment or consumption distinctive in principle. So that what I'm trying to say is that this is our approach is basically a preventive one, a curative one, which has been at the root of why we adopted this kind of an approach of achieving development, making country a developed country by 2047 with this kind of rules. Now, as we proceed, what are we going to? This is problematic. So we are essentially talking about why this particular fiscal problem. We will be basically focusing about the FRBM framework, and we essentially argue that there are three interrelated fault lines. First part of the argument we will be articulating what are the fault lines, basically three fault lines in the fiscal architecture, and then we will move towards what is the kind of how are you dreaming with Indian development? What could be the key attributes of a fiscal architecture which will facilitate the country to transform to a developed economy stage? So that is the second stage, and finally we will be concluding the paper. Now, when you talk about the fault lines in India's fiscal rules, in fact, I remembered of what came to my mind is after all this policy making, something is like that is mechanical engineer. You're electrical engineer. Isn't he mechanical engineer here? No. I remember, I think you also you started learning driving in the young age. I also did that when I was in the 8th standard. I started learning in a jeep. So for me, it is this policy for fiscal rule formulation is something like designing of an automobile. Why do you need an automobile? You want conquer speed. You need to reach somewhere in a faster. You need speed. So you can have speed. At the same time, your design should be having one that ensures energy efficiency. If you have got an automobile that guts petrol like anything, you have to have energy efficiency. Then you also need a comfortable ride. Your shock absorber should be good, and you should have a thermal control should be good. So what I am thinking of suppose you are thinking in terms of an automobile wherein you are provided with a comfortable ride, but very stability, very comfortable ride, but that doesn't take you to the destination after 2 days. It doesn't serve any purpose. And also when you are designing your car, the automobile has to be designed to the road conditions. A car which is designed for a wonderful road which is available in our national highway, and if it is taking to a road in Idukki, it won't do the job. So you should be able to design according to the road conditions. So an automobile is engineered to achieve speed, growth and development in our language, while ensuring a comfortable ride, fiscal stability, and we also need to ensure macroeconomic balance. Now, I think I don't need to get into this too much. I've already spent. Now, the point is that what is the first fundamental, the first fourth line in our curative framework is the mismatch between the problem, the conditions in which the framework has been implemented and where it really originated. So this takes me to the question: where does this came from? In 1840s, you are aware of you heard about the subnational fiscal crisis in the US. Almost 10 states almost defaulted, and 3 states, completely ran into trouble, and that is precisely that led to the fiscal intervention. In 1982, we have the Latin American debt crisis, again on account of the subnational spending. Then followed in 1992, when Maastricht Treaty, when a group of developed countries were formed together, they want to ensure that the fiscal stability is ensured. So they have set certain rules saying that the fiscal deficit should not be more than 3% and debt should not be more than 60%. There are certain guidelines which are. So then in 1994, we have New Zealand. In India, we have got 2003 FRBM framework. So by 2021, 105 countries in the world have adopted one form or other form of fiscal rules. So you should note that each wave of this intervention rule was induced by and calibrated for, first of all, these were calibrated for economies mostly in the different stages of development. And particularly, they were aiming mainly at what is called addressing the question of excess demand, and they were aiming at stability question. But when we are coming to a developing economy context, we are talking about, as I told you earlier in a Malayalam, there's a saying that those who had a nice lunch, you are looking for what? A nice bed for a nap. Somebody who is hungry is looking for a plate or a leaf to get some food. So as far as developed countries are concerned, for them, they have already achieved the basic developmental requirements, and for them, their basic need is stability. So they have excess demand situation if you spend more. For such countries, stability is the prime concern. And when you are trying to emulate that kind of a framework to a developing economy where development is the paramount importance, of course, stability is important. Paramount, prime job is giving food to people, building roads, and providing health and education. So what I'm trying to say that the problem here is that when you are transplanting the fiscal rule which was evolved in an altogether different context to an economy where it doesn't fit. Now, when you're coming to Indian context, we know that by 2000, we were having very high fiscal deficit, about 8 to 9%, and we have rising public debt, almost 80% plus, and we have unsustainable interest burdens. This is what actually the context in which the FRBM bill was introduced in 2000 by then Finance Minister Yashwant Sinha, and by 2003, it was enacted and it came into force by 2004. And essentially it aimed at eliminating revenue deficit to be zero. That means all your current expenditure must be spent from your current income. Once all your current expenditure is met, whatever you borrow is essentially meant for investment. And it tells us to a developing economy that you should not invest more than 3%. And this 3% is okay. This is taken from a developed economy context. They have already reached higher levels of development. If you spend more, there will be excess demand situation there. Here it is a supply constraint situation where we are actually trying to impose that kind of a context. Now, then this has been kind of changed. This 2002, it has a long story. I don't want to tell all of you. I must have heard in your class and all. So now the focus later under encasing, the focus shifted to debt to GDP ratio, combined state and union and the state should not more than be 60%, of which 40 for the union and 20 for the states. And there are escape clauses. 5% of the GDP for different clauses, including our electricity reform and etc. And post-pandemic, we have what is called a gradual glide path for the for whom? In fact, Kiran brought to my attention this thing. Glide path for not for the union, not for the states. It is for the union, for a glide path for this thing. Now, looking at this is a graph which yesterday, he is not here, I want to thank him for that. Yesterday, Renji sent to me saying that, so this is it. What does it show? My dear friends, I don't think that in the economic history of any country, there is a legislation which was passionately initiated by a particular actor, most powerful actor, union government, and that has not been, I repeat, adhered to by the key actor, not even a 1 year. Not for 1 year, not in a 1 year, not during 5 years, not in 10 years, not in 20 years, in a quarter of a century. In a quarter of a century, the FRBM was not adhered to by the union government. It has been amended. It has been postponed. It has been changed. It has been, and this is a kind of framework that we have been kind of now. This is, and why now the question which I thought that okay, see, this is when you look back why this has been. This is a framework developed in the case of a developed economy, and this already said. Raja Chelai, as early as in 1913, said that this fiscal problem of developing economies is not one of excess demand. It is a problem of transformative problem. It's a problem of addressing development. I draw your attention back to Richard Nelson, writing in 1856, in his Law Level Equilibrium Trap. He argued that an economy is poor because you have your income is low. Your income is low because your investment is low. Your investment is low because your saving is low. Your saving is low because your income is low. So you have to, if you don't have saving, you have to take somebody else's saving. You have to borrow and invest. And breaking out of this particular vicious circle calls for investment, and that's.
And again, Prabhat Patnaik is another thing. He offers a complementary perspective. Fiscal consolidation frameworks under liberalization systematically subordinate development expenditure to the preference of finance capital. Today, finance ministers are not scared about this Asha worker or whatever it is. They are scared about what will be the Moody's rating. That rating will be determining what rate you are able to borrow, because the role of finance capital and the credit rating agencies, the new actors in the neoliberal regime, and that is what actually controls. They are not so much. So now, another problem. What is the outcome of that? The outcome of this is, in fact, the fiscal duality. While we have been systematically holding on to revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, and finance commissions, stipulations, FRBM, and all other things, and of course GST revenue and all kinds of things. The state governments who are closer to the people, they have to address the basic problem. In fact, last month, Ranjit and we were there in a meeting with the CAG. I told them that CAG is worried because 16th Finance Commission said that no, 13th Finance Commission, 14th Finance Commission, 15th Finance Commission found that this off-budget borrowing is happening. This is a headache. This is a headache that we can't afford to continue. And 16th Finance Commission said, no more. You need fiscal transparency. It has to be brought under the this thing. There's no more this informal. But the problem here is, in fact, we quoted you all guys. We said that, this headache will not be solved by aspirin. There is a tumor over there. That tumor is FRBM. Unless you do a surgery, this headache will be keeping on coming, because we know how our finance secretaries are struggling, our finance ministers are struggling on 30th of every month because of the FRBM to pay the salary, and necessity is the mother of invention, and they being smart, if you do away with off-budget borrowing, they will come with something else because they are survived. So now the point is that, in fact, you must be asking a question. When the 16th Finance Commission said that you must do away with the fiscal, this particular fiscal off-budget borrowing, what has been the price that the country has paid during the last quarter century on account of, by resorting to fiscal, this particular off-budget borrowing? Has anybody any view of it? Has anybody any view on it? I mean, somebody, do you like to say that, okay, oh, India lagged behind China because of off-budget borrowing? Without off-budget borrowing, India would have been exceeding China. So what I'm trying to say that our policy decisions are not informed. I mean, this is something which somebody should do your PhD on. Now the point is that as a result of that, since FRBM's arithmetic, what actually happened? If you take public capital formation in the country, that is something like 7.1% in the early 1990s, and through much of the post-FRBM consolidation period, according to World Bank, it's almost halved, 7.1% to 4.4%. And who got the biggest hit? It is the capital investment, because your current expenditure is something which you have no other way but you have to meet. But where you can, when in the interest of expenditure cut, what you cut is only capital expenditure. That is why. Now, this is the second fault line. What we argued is that we have what is called a fiscal analytical frame, which is applied to developing economy, which was evolved in an altogether different context. This is like sending a professor of geriatrics to treat in the pediatric department. So you are trying to apply, don't we have the common sense, to understand what is your reality and where we were. And we know that the logic that Rangarajan and Professor Dikka Srivastava came up with, the 3% rule, and we have got a financial saving of something like 10-12%.
and 10% of which to avoid crowding out of private investment, 3% to the union, 3% to the state, and rest 4% to the private sector. And using that logic, today the household financial saving is Jobin is doing a work on this under Ashwati. They are doing a work saying that our household financial saving has declined from 12% to almost 6 point plus now, 6.5%. So how will you divide between 3 and 4? How will you divide? Anyway, now the second point which we are on, the second fourth line is that you have a context here. The rules designed for the sovereign countries, fiscal rules are designed for the countries with the sovereign power. And such rules are, without any further reflection, without any common sense, I would say, applied blindly to the subnational entities who don't have the sovereign power. Now let us take the Indian context. We have, when you take center, the union government has complete control over their revenue. They have complete control over their expenditure. And if at all any fiscal spillover they can completely reap that. When you are coming to Indian context, we know that when we come to states, we have a situation of what is called we all know about the congenital inequality, where in states account for something like over 37% of the 62, nearly 63% of the total expenditure, and their revenue entitlement is only 37%. And on this inequality that they work, and Reddy and the two Reddys, Y.V. Reddy and the Reddy, and of course in the latest edition, our Chakravarti also joined, our Pinaki. Which one? 37. Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's the same. Yeah, so type correctly. Thank you. Yeah. Then they argue that they describe this asymmetry as the central structural tension of India's intergovernmental fiscal architecture. States have little control over revenue. And Isaac Chakravarti and Mohan, in their book, they found that the FRBM framework compresses the state's fiscal space. Suha's work again talked about it. Precisely when the developmental spending is most needed, it has been compressed. Now, in this context, what is the plight of the states? They have, first of all, too much of expenditure burden, and they have no control over the revenue. Here comes GST. You have surrendered almost 52% of your revenue entitlements. Your revenue power is gone. Here comes the union government taking a decision. Okay, MNREGA is transformed into VBG Ramji. Kerala government's additional spending is how much? 2,500 crore. 1,000. Yeah, I put some figure. Yeah, somewhere around that. That you have to find out how much is. So that for you have state entities, you have no control, total control, neither over their revenue nor over their expenditure. Now, again, more importantly, are they able to take advantage of the fiscal spillovers? You take Kerala. Kerala is a state which is always castigated for, now we have the highest, big 5.07 borrowing, and we are also shown for highest committed expenditure. Who has been the beneficiary of this highest committed expenditure? Where is this highest committed expenditure coming from? Even 3-4 decades before, central government thought about PPP, that is public-private participation. Government, Kerala, thought about public-private participation in education. Private management and public giving salary, government giving salaries. So much so that 59% of our government expenditure about the salaries for the teachers. And these teachers, they are not saleable. These human capital, health and education manpower, they are mobile. They went to other states. Those states benefited. They went abroad. They went to Gulf or America, wherever they send foreign exchange. That gave stability to the national external sector by contributing foreign exchange. 2.7% of the population contributing, according to Rajan, 23% of the total remittances. These are the fiscal spillovers. And Harilal and me, we have argued that in the process of migration of people from Kerala, that it has led to resource movement effect and spending effect, the so-called Dutch disease syndrome. Because of that, Kerala economy got decelerated. That means we created positive fiscal spillovers to other states and to the national economy. In that process, we had to pay for the Dutch disease syndrome, resource movement and spending effect. This is what actually happens in any fiscal federal context. It is nothing new. In 1972, Wallace Holt said about it, about fiscal spillovers. Neither the union government nor any of the finance commissions have ever used the word fiscal spillover in the Indian context. In fact, I must also say that I'm respectful to Mr. Ajay Narayan, who said that the revenue deficit grant, which they gave 52,000 crore, was a price for Kerala's performance in SDG and HDI, which, according to Professor M.A. Umman and Parma Chakravarti, in terms of Indian states, you find that there has been a convergence in terms of sigma and both beta convergence and sigma convergence. But after FRBM, that convergence has been slowing down. Now, the point which I want to say that I hope this fiscal pillar, and in this context, that such subnational entities are given with rules which now. So second point is that we are having rules evolved, designed for the sovereign powers, the sovereign entities, which is being transplanted to the entities who have no sovereignty or no control over revenue expenditure, and there is no provision for what is called fiscal spillovers. Now, final point here is, final fault line is, how do you define your capital expenditure and revenue expenditure? The deepest fault line is conceptual. An industrial era conception of capital carried into a century in which intangible investment drives development. In the previous century, your growth was a function of your industrial capital, your steam engine, your railroad, your other things. Today, we are living in a world where according to the endogenous growth theory, it is what drives growth is human capital. It is the knowledge. And in fact, according to our Globalics network, we argue that knowledge is the most important resource of the modern economy. And if this is what we are saying. And when it comes to India's budget classification, $100 million invested in steel is capital. $100 million invested in cloud, human capital, R&D, software development, it is revenue expenditure. And without that, you cannot bend your steel. Without bending that steel, nothing can happen. And you should understand that, under India's budget classification, capital expenditure is defined as spending that creates tangible fixed assets. Spending on knowledge is mostly treated as revenue expenditure, where the axe falls first in the fiscal consolidation to satisfy the zero revenue deficit constraint. Now, according to the System of National Accounts 2008, jointly published by United Nations, European Commission, IMF, OECD, and World Bank, they have reclassified R&D expenditure from intermediate consumption. They have reclassified. It recognizes R&D creates durable knowledge, and that has to be put as capital expenditure. But in our great country, I don't know how long it will take for our pundits to At least start thinking about it. So much so that today in our country, in early 90s, we used to spend something like 0.86% of the resources on R&D. Today it is 0.64. During this period, China increased their R&D expenditure almost fourfold, 2.8%. So we are going to become a developed economy without R&D, without investment, without innovation. We are going to do all these things without that. No different. In fact, I told the DST people that just remove that. I was in last year when I went to I'm in the advisory committee there. So I told them just remove that. Same, doesn't matter. In fact, in the last week I was in IMB. It's not an aberration. It's a trend. It's don't be able to do that. It's same, no problem. 0.64, 65, whatever. Maybe 0.65, nothing beyond that. It's not because of COVID. It's basically. Now, so there are the three fault lines. I'll let you. What's the time? How much time I taken? 4:23. And I've stopped 5 idea. Sorry. I think, to sum up the three fault lines, these are the things. First, you have already got, I suppose. Yeah. First is we have a curative logic thing. And within that, we have a framework developed in a different context. We are using it over here. And second thing is that we have a problem of rules designed for the sovereign entities used to subnational entities without sovereign power. And fourth one is the conceptual issue that we said. I think that coming back to my automobile, an automobile with a misaligned chassis, registered under rules designed for a different road is not merely imperfect, it is unfit for the journey in India, with the journey that India has taken off. Now, coming with the way forward, I'll finish in 5 minutes time. Oh, sorry. Okay. Now, what could be? We have to dream. What is this for the new generation? Not by the time 2047, we are not going to be there. So this is for you. We are dreaming for you. We will be in the grave at that time. It is for you. So a preventive fiscal architecture, its principles and institutional design. This is not. We are not asking not a relaxation of the discipline, but a reconception of what discipline requires for a transforming economy. That is the broad premise in which we would like to think. To begin with, first of all, reconceiving what fiscal discipline requires. There is a need for a preventive fiscal architecture that that addresses each structural failure directly. I think I'll be very fast here. First of all, we have to think in terms of what is called what kind of. So, for example, how do I quickly say if I cannot deviate? I think. We actually draw it. This is actually drawn from our Ratin Roy and Hoti. Yeah.
Say that you can take time. I will also believe because I'm interested in your pictures. The thing is that if you are busy.
I'm not busy. I think it's already taken 1 hour. 1 hour. Yeah. Drawing from Ratin Roy, you must be knowing, is a very, you'd have been a good commentator for it. In fact, he was also the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. The thing. So, using that, okay, let me just build on to that. What does it essentially mean? First of all, we need to have instead of a curative architecture, we have to go for a preventive architecture. First of all, we need to talk about, first of all, revenue aspect. What is the revenue? As I already said, we have the tax GDP ratio in this country rising from almost 9% to something like 16%, remaining flat at 2% after increase. Today, we need to have, if you have got targets of 3% fiscal deficit, much more strongly what you should be looking for is, okay, the target is 25% of the tax GDP should be the next 5 years. We don't have any target. And that should be with a view to preempt rather than creating the problem. You should be assuming that particular revenue mobilization should be leading to expenditures in the most efficient manner. expenditures in the most appropriate sectors, that expenditure rationalization. And with that, you work with your revenue, work with your expenditure so that you don't have to work with your deficit. It is taken care of. Second thing is you have to think in terms of subnational, differentiated subnational rules. And third thing is an independent fiscal authority. I think the first part I already said, when you are talking about investment, first of all, we have to think in terms of our revenue targets are to be fixed. Instead of, more important should be thought in terms of exploiting the potential tax potential of the state. And secondly, is equally important, you should be highlighting, instead of FRBM, what you should be thinking is you should be highlighting, you should be emphasizing more on borrow. Even if you borrow, you can borrow, the golden rule. Every rupee borrowed should be ensured to be invested to ensure that the return from that investment is higher than the rate of interest that you have to pay. That is that means you don't have to bother about revenue fiscal deficit, because the borrowing is already invested in such a way that the return is more than, that is what is the Romer sustainability conditions and other things. It is already built into that. That will, I would argue that in a country like India, what we need is not FRBM. What we need is FRBU, Fiscal Responsibility and Borrowing Utilization Act. In the world of AI, in the world of data analytics, in the world of big data, the union government can effectively control, the state government can effectively control every rupee that is being invested. Now you may ask, okay, what will happen to the already having revenue deficit? That will get adjusted if you work for your fiscal spillovers and other things. Now, the investment definition must be extended. That definition has to be changed. That I already said, which is already not, we don't have to do. It's already the system of national accounts 2008 has been already been adopted by other countries. We should be following that. That is the second point. Now, coming to the okay, this all is preventive. Yeah. Next thing is correcting the uniform rules fallacy. I said that, we already said that we have different states. We have states varying in terms of their capacity. Anita has given me a wonderful table. I've not used it here, but you have got something like states like Bihar, 24% of the total revenue deficit is coming from own. You have states like Maharashtra, there something like 80% of their revenue deficit is coming from their own. So all those states vary so much widely in terms of their fiscal capacity. Not only in that sense, they also vary in terms of the ability to make investment, public investment and spending. Then you are upholding one country, one revenue deficit, one fiscal deficit. This must go. In the world of data analytics, you can calibrate. So you don't, then your finance commission is already working out differentiated things. And why can't you articulate these kind of differentiated fiscal rules according to, you need, I mean, no, Suma will say that, okay, about your centrally sponsored schemes, your paper has got published, no? It is right, I was told. Okay. Lakunda told me that. Okay, anyway, the point is, we can, even with the centrally sponsored schemes, we have one size fits all. So now then the question is, we have to, the second thing is the fiscal deficit computed as a function of states' own source of revenue and other indicators. Second thing is spillover compensation. If they have actually 16th Finance Commission has made an interesting point about contributing. In fact, I must say that we made that argument, GIFT made that argument more strongly, saying that we need to, in our report, major point was that we need to articulate, we need to have a strategy of, instead of facilitating the catch-up of the laggards. That's very important. Today, if you really mean that India should become a developed economy, we must have a strategy of walking on two legs. While facilitating or hand-holding the laggards, you must also ensure that the growth, the development boomers, Those who are performing, they should not be penalized. They should also be rewarded. Then only you can achieve the. Now, this is where we want to know the fiscal spillover compensation mechanism. It has never been thought about, I think, sooner than later. I mean, I don't think that we should be waiting for the next finance commission to articulate. It should be sooner they do, the better. And final point, any union decision that demonstrably increases the state expenditure. If the state's expenditure burden increases for none of their benefit, and particularly and explicitly because of the union government's decision, they must be compensated. That should be built in. So now, final thing is to doing all this. I mean, it's not our point. It's already there. We need an independent fiscal authority. We have a finance commission that says this much share, this much that, this much, etc., etc. Then here comes Ukraine war. Here comes Middle East war. Everything go away war. Whom to ask? Who to ask? No one. So in a country like ours, and we have, so for example, we have a monetary policy committee is there. There's a monetary policy committee. They have amended in 2016 the RBI Act of 1934, whatever. Why there is no fiscal? Why there is no fiscal authority, a permanent fiscal body? I mean, Fiscal Finance Commission, Professor Gondarao has been arguing for it. Quite many of, and why so much delay? And these are something on which this cannot be further delayed for an effective functioning of this. Now, I think for those who are, nobody was sleeping, so I don't need to say the conclusion. I think for those who are sleeping, I think I don't know nobody is. So I think at the core of our argumentation is a curative. What we have is a curative consolidation logic designed to remedy fiscal deterioration in a structurally mature economies, which we are using while we know that it is incompatible to a developing economy context. And our challenges and our mandates are very different. FRBM framework has persisted beyond its conjectural purpose. In 2008, 2 and 3 and all, it's a difficult time. And you cannot think in terms of a static ratio which will go regardless of what happens. How can you be naive? Are your analytical foundation so weak and so flawed that you cannot imagine the changing economic and political context? We should be able to do that. I mean, today, where are your structural equilibrium modeling and other things here? What are your abilities lost for that? Its persistence has generated fiscal duality, which is off-budget borrowing. It has led to significant decline in saving. It has led to significant decline in investment. And in fact, country has made a big price for that. We paid a big price for that. And the question which you must be asking, what has been the price that the country paid for the off-budget borrowing? No analysis being done about it. And even, of course, I know some of our colleagues, many of you are working on the FRBM impact on health, education, other things. That's good, but all these. Now, rules for the sovereign apply to the non-sovereign. That's what we already said. And it excludes the knowledge investment. Today, the defective or inappropriate conceptual categories. We are not changing according to our changing context. We don't know that we are living in a knowledge economy and all. We are still in the second industrial revolution. What we are not asking for relaxation of the standards. We are only asking for the elevation. The preventive fiscal architecture proposed is not a relaxation of the prevailing standards. It is the elevation to a more demanding level, a framework that protects public investment through an extended golden rule, corrects subnational governance for revenue dependency and inter-jurisdictional spillovers, establishment of fiscal authority, expanding fiscal capacity, raising the tax GDP ratio inter alia through formalization dividend, what has happened to the, and again, reclassification of the knowledge investment alignment with the SNA, System of National Accounts 2008. A framework for 2003, evolved in the context of 2003, cannot finance the ambition of 2047 if you are serious about it. The urgency of this conceptualization is not merely analytical. Vikasit Bharat 2047, a 30 trillion high-income economy by the centenary of independence requires a sustained growth of 7 to 9% over 2 decades and a public investment trajectory the current architecture cannot accommodate without reproducing the very fiscal duality it designed to prevent. If this again, they themselves approved, accepted it, but Niti Aayog said, Economic Survey said it, but now CAG wants to implement it strictly. Achieving this vision requires R&D expenditure to raise close to my heart from 0.64% to 2% that we have been talking about. A trajectory, the zero revenue deficit restraint structurally obstructs so long as R&D is classified as a current expenditure. A fiscal architecture designed for the crisis conjuncture, as I said, 2003 cannot finance transformation ambition of 2047, to say the least, and the obvious. Thank you very much.
Kiran, Joseph, and I had a discussion before we came down for the seminar. So I was telling both of them that this is one of the best papers I have read from Joseph in recent times. So, in fact, I felt that this is an excellent paper. And today, the presentation also, he was very disciplined in the sense, no. I know. Yeah, it was. I told no, today's presentation was very disciplined. Like, you know, usually you take a lot of detours here and there, but no, today it was to the point, and then it was a very organized presentation, stuck to the format, and then explain all the points. Now, why I say that this is a very good paper that Professor Joseph has recently written. This is the rationale for this. I'm not really explaining all the points in detail because there should be time for discussion. See, as I was telling in the beginning, the issue that this paper is dealing with is very old. It's it has a century of history. I was mentioning about Richard Kahn's presentation, and then about general theory, and John Robinson's humbug of finance. In all those initial discussions, they were discussing about humbug of finance in the sense there was this argument that government budget should be always balanced. There shouldn't be any deficit. If government is having deficit, government will be borrowing, and government will be eating up the savings available in the society, and government will be, public borrowing will be crowding out private investment, private investors will suffer, market forces will suffer. That's not good for the economy. Richard Kahn, who was a student of Keynes, was trying to disprove this argument before general theory, in fact. He was a student of Keynes, and he was saying that this is a static idea, that no, you think that saving is limited, and when the government takes away a portion of from that savings, then private sector will suffer. He proved that no, he was trying to argue that that's not the case. When the government invests, government borrows and invests, then there is a possibility of income increasing. Then savings will also increase. So you should have a dynamic view. So if the government is active, if the government is borrowing, government is investing, then the income itself will grow, savings will grow, investment will grow. So, and provided the economy is not in full employment. So in fact, no, there is no question of any excess demand. an excess demand problem can be solved by public investment, and it need not be even inflationary. This was the argument which later Keynes developed in his general theory also, where he argued that government can have deficits, should have deficit when recessionary tendencies are there. And famously, he told that no, government should even pay for people who are just digging pits, because it's very valuable. And John Robinson later, at different points, developed this further. And in India, Prabhat, in most of his presentations on public finance, particularly fiscal deficit, he speaks about humbug of finance. Recently for KEA, he came here, and they were 2-3 days, and they were with us. And then in that workshop also, he spoke about humbug of finance, how somehow this particular view of finance was holding the key even then, during the time of the general theory. Even now they are dominating in a particular way, but somehow this is getting an upper hand, not because this is very rational and convincing, but because this is appealing to certain interests, particularly interest of finance. And the history of this particular issue is not ending at that point. In fact, in Professor Joseph's paper, in fact, that history is taken further. He is explaining, narrating the story of FRBM Act and similar acts in different contexts. He's mentioned about USA, mentioned about other countries, and how it has become the mainstream argument for government policy making everywhere, and how it sort of affected our policy since 1991. Now, if this problem is very old and known, why should then it become very relevant and interesting? That's where I like the paper, because he is reopening the whole issue. And I believe that this issue should not be left to the mainstream. It should, we should be all trying to open up this issue from different points of view, from different angles. And he was mentioning about the work of GIFT faculty, and somebody is working on savings. The whole FRBM Act was justified in terms of protecting the private sector, protecting savings, protecting investment by the private sector. What has happened to India's savings? India's savings rates have gone down to hell. It's disappearing. And private investment is also not responding. So the policy since 1991 and policy since the introduction of FRBM Act, it has not really helped us in terms of inducing private investment, private savings, household savings, or general investment in the country. And he's also comparing with China, where India had actually lagged far behind not only China, many other developing countries, and not to mention about developed nations. And see, all these countries are having strong governments, bigger governments. They are collecting more tax. They are spending more, and the government is growing faster than the private sector in most of these countries. And that is not, in fact, driving away private investment. The big state, which is growing, which is also promoting private investment in all these countries. Their private corporates are being helped. All these new technology companies, X or whatever, all these companies are being supported by US, by Europe, their states. So the whole issue, though it's relatively old, these questions will have to be asked again and again. And in this paper, these issues are reimagined in a very interesting way by bringing in these fault lines, 3 fault lines. They are very interesting because it is very contextual. taking the reality of India into perspective. For instance, this question of knowledge economy and the way we account expenditure, whether it is capital or revenue expenditure, expenditure on education, higher education, research, that is counted as revenue expenditure. Even in the case of Kerala economy, our expenditure on education, research, and all, even the expenditure on gift is counted as revenue expenditure. So it's one way of reopening the issue in a meaningful way, which will be appealing even to the most orthodox kind of policy makers. So all these fault lines, 3 fault lines he mentioned, they sounds very interesting and appealing for policymakers, and that should influence policy discussions in our country. And when he mentioned about accounting practices, again, how accounting practices, archaic accounting practices influence our development policy. He was mentioning about investment in R&D and education in a knowledge economy context. But then from Kerala context, we know that even whatever we devolve to the local governments, around 20,000 crores every year, that is counted as revenue expenditure. That is not counted as capital expenditure at all. At least 10,000 to 15,000 crores should be counted as capital expenditure, but it is not counted as capital expenditure. And then also, his point about interregional variations, the importance of variability within a nation. The states are very different, and in fact, in the paper which he mentioned about our paper, he mentioned we are bringing this point that Indian fiscal system is insensitive to the stage of development and role of the state. Role of the state will have to improve over time, and that's what we learned from history. And in India, since the neoliberal reforms, the size of the state in terms of government expenditure to GDP, that has stagnated. That is across time. Across space also it is happening. And that's very interesting. Whichever state is doing well in terms of GDP, that state is having a smaller state. They cannot afford more expenditure. Whereas Odisha and UP and other laggards, they have a higher government in terms of their expenditure or expenditure to GDP ratio. And interestingly, the tax to GDP ratio, again, he was also mentioning finally that the state should tax more and state should have more income through taxes. Again, that's again the spirit of neoliberalism, against the spirit of fiscal conservatism. But here in India, we are taxing less, and then the states which are doing well in terms of per capita income, they are taxing less. They are allowed to tax less only because there is a disconnect between economy and exchequer, which can be easily seen. Now, one can go on explaining these things, but my request is that we should all try with all our might to contribute to this debate. We should force the authorities to reopen the issue. Otherwise, India will be lagging behind. And there is no rationale behind the whole thing. Economic theory doesn't really approve this kind of a position. But just because interest of finance is so powerful, somehow this has become mainstream thinking. This is influencing policy. And many of our economists, the people of our tribe, contribute to this knowingly or unknowingly, which is really damaging for the country, for poorer regions. So I'll just conclude by saying that in Gulati Institute, many scholars are working on similar lines, and they all can contribute to opening up this question. Finally, about the policy prescription that is given about an independent agency for ensuring fiscal discipline or to ensure that we have a dynamic fiscal policy. There can be differences, like the nitty-gritty of such a situation, such a policy alternative needs to be debated, discussed. But let us try to get policy makers to come forward and discuss these things. Wherever possible, we should be raising this issue from different points of view, different angles should be brought in, because it's not very easy. The mainstream, the powerful, globally, they have a position, and this is a subaltern kind of a position. To make people hear this, it's really a lot of effort. But then the current international context is favoring this, because we have a break in the global relations. The international political economy is redefining. There will be changes, and we are in a flux kind of a situation. And this is where some of these unsettled questions can be raised, and new answers can be found out. That way, the paper is very timely, and I hope more attention will be coming to this kind of. Thank you. So we will have. Suggestion is that we will first invite our online participants, and then we'll come to the offline. Mohan sir.
Thank you for joining.
Oh, thank you. This is not my field basically, but when I heard that KJ is presenting a paper, I know it will be a very serious thing, and I am not disappointed. So I'll be looking forward to seeing the full paper as and when it is available to me, because the presentation is too brief for me to understand the issues. Thank you very much for the presentation and the effort.
Thank you for
no
joining.
comment.
Thank you
No
very
questions as such. No question from my side.
Nice seeing you. We talked
Okay.
one couple of months ago. Gareth, how are you? Gareth, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. How are you? Good to see you.
Yes, good, thanks. No questions, I'm just listening in. Thank you.
Yeah. This is Sneha, right. Partho, hi. So how come you joined? Thank you very much for joining. Partha, how are you? Okay, he's in.
Maybe we'll take one.
Yeah, we'll take. Yeah, right.
And then somebody says, yeah.
Okay,
Would you like to say something?
I think sustainability, no problem here. No.
I'm learning a lot of things on finance. Anyway, see, one of the issue I think, which as you are opening the debate to look into the whole financial structure is going to come. How really it will contribute in the sustainability? That becomes a very important thing. See, one of the issue becomes now very important, that on international investment on the climate change is coming down. In fact, they tell that we'll do this one, but nothing comes. Finally, this country has to really find their own way. I mean, the state has to find their own way. So this is one issue when you try to think of it that, okay, we like to make a development finance. Because unless and until you look into this, and then there actually arise a very important question which you again raised, that what we invest for the education or the human resources, we take as a revenue expenditure, not taken as an investment. The same way, when you try to manage the disaster, you think it's an expenditure. It is not an investment. Now, this is an issue where it has to come. Now, in disaster management, we repeatedly tell that disaster, one of the things to disaster manage is that becomes a, it's an investment for the future. You have to look into that way. So that is the issue has to really come along with this one. Thank you.
Excellent reflection. Excellent reflection.
Useful point, because in the paper he was mentioning about when you have a regime of fiscal disciplining, then there are certain kind of expenditure which will suffer, and this is one of the candidates. No,
Yes.
Such expenditure will be treated as non-revenue expenditure and will be pushed aside. So we'll.
Interesting point. Thank you. Parthas, yeah, just send you a message. We would have heard it as later.
Yeah, Nirmal.
Thank you, Professor KJ. I just want to have a couple of clarification, not clarification, I would just want to point out something. With regard to the evolution of rule-based system, 1840s, then it is starting again in 1980s. I think there is a big gap in between that thing. Even the Bretton Woods or all the kind of systems that we see during the 1 century thing, I think there was a missing thing. So maybe some bit of thing is there. Then coming to the Indian economic case, where you were telling that some bit of the manufacturing capital was left there, and now we are into the kind of service oriented, the structural kind of transformation. But we all know that India kind of bypassed the whole manufacturing sector thing. Now we are into a kind of service-led kind where the neoliberal policies are also there. Maybe that is the kind of thing that is prompting this prudence kind of thing, where the financial capital is too much looking at this kind of thing. I just asking it in a louder manner. Thank you.
Interesting. That the evolution of the fiscal, I think here is experts here, they will supplement it. But I think we are there because in the history, these are the major episodes that induced, invoked fiscal reorientation and intervention. I suppose that's what this is. I picked up from an IMF paper. That's I think. I have not done any primary research on that. This is the major. You have anything else you can add to that? I think, Ranjit, do you think any other episodes which in the fiscal rule regime? Yeah, and any globally noted episodes that induced disciplining, fiscal discipline.
The most established, framework are a Maastricht Treaty and Golden Rule, Stability and Growth Pact, and most of the other things it's not numerical basis. It is fiscal transparency oriented or revenue. Or each components of public finance, they have a different framework. So like that only. In US also, it is like that. There's transparency based frameworks and all. It's not numerical frameworks are.
Basically,
these are
that is most popular. That is the IMF.
Related to this, there is a very important point that we shouldn't be missing. When we say that the government investment, public investment should be there, and we cannot be very conservative as far as finance is concerned, that position should not be interpreted as a justification for, financial, indiscipline. Financial discipline is very important. And having more state investment, having a strong public sector doesn't mean that you can have all kind of justification for inefficiency or corruption or anything. No, the government should be there. Government investment should be there, particularly where the private capital is not really going to help you. Then that government should be efficient too. There is no compromise on that. And that should be emphasized. I think in his paper, he has mentioned that. So the alternative he's suggesting is not really free this thing for government to do anything. They want to. One should go towards a more disciplined public use of money also.
Yeah, I think, Partho, thank you very much for your, thank you for joining. I think we're thinking of having you here in person, hopefully in the near future. Thank you for joining. I think your good words are valued very much. Your appreciative words are, and his Professor Partho Mukhopadhyay was in CPR now. Is still associated with CPR. And the classification of investment in intangible capital like human capital is as a revenue expenditure is a clear shortcoming. Even the World Bank is re-examining it. This is what in the human capital flagship report, this is adding to this point.
Thank you for that very important point.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, for a very excellent presentation. And I think it's a novel approach in looking the old, old expenditure pattern to a new way of looking at it. I think in your suggestion, I am concerned of your suggestions. Actually, see, you are arguing that the tax potential should increase. So in which way, or that sort of an analysis is absent in the paper. And also next point is
here is a person.
Okay, sir. And so as far as the paper is concerned, and the next point is that you are suggesting that instead of FRBM, we should have FRBU. Here the question is, borrowing, whatever we are borrowing, we have to invest. So we have to reduce the revenue deficit and all. But here the question is, one has to look at the interest payments. How much expenditure is going from the revenue expenditure towards interest payments? So it's especially in Kerala and all, it's a major concern. Even for the central government also, a major part of their expenditure is transferring to as interest payment. So if you take that thing, there is nothing left for investment or adjusting the revenue receipts. Nothing is left for investment. So this borrowing, if you going for this FRBU, if there is revenue deficit and the interest payment, how a state like Kerala will utilize that utilization thing? That itself is a this is a constraint.
Yeah, go to your point.
Especially a state like Kerala.
We'll respond. Yeah, go to your point.
Once this
Interesting point. Interesting point.
We cannot.
Interesting point.
We cannot move
When
on.
it comes to the policy alternative suggested, there will be many questions like this which will come up. And in fact, that's the beauty of it also. Like when you make a policy suggestion, it's not a kind of black and white kind of thing. You have everything possible being said. For example, the suggestion to have a separate authority to ensure fiscal authority. We have the experience of election commission, finance commissions. We have regulatory authorities. Many of these agencies ultimately work for the government. So the relative autonomy of such an agency, that's questionable, and the experience of various agencies generally don't really support that the argument that they will function in a autonomous fashion. That's one thing. Two, you have monetary policy, an independent committee. Then you have for fiscal policy, you have a different kind of a committee. Then what is the role of government, democratically elected government? See, we are living in a democracy, so we cannot have the economists or professionals doing all the decisions for the society, and their independence, their autonomy cannot be trusted too. And if they are becoming more powerful than democratically elected governments, that will be a problem. What is more probably important is the the question of economics, the question of principles. In fact, we should say that this nonsense of the humbug of finance should be questioned in our curriculum everywhere and in policy discussions. That is very, very important. In our common sense, this has somehow crept into. Like in any discussion, this comes. Borrowing is very bad. For example, see, if government is not borrowing, who is borrowing? It's public money, no? Public money. We are all saving. Households are saving, and we are putting this money in SBI, this money in this bank or that bank, and only the Adani can borrow, or only the private sector can borrow, and then they are not repaying the bank. They are not repaying. How much the government of India through budget, how much they compensated these banks? It's more than what government borrowed. It's more than what government borrowed. So you want all savings to be given to all these corporations. And government should not borrow. Government should not finance gift or CDS or higher education research. Or even say like the VSSC. VSSC is so important. The modern warfare is changing so much.
Yes.
Without VSSC,
Space.
we would have been nowhere in Sindhu war and all. We would have been thrown away. So that was public investment. And now what is happening to VSSC? We are not investing enough, so the scientists are leaving. Scientists are leaving. And private sector is coming. Ultimately, this private sector companies in this area, okay, one need not be negative about it. But how will you ensure that these private sector companies are really doing well for India? They can be serving any other country, Israel or United States of America. So
I think the
policy issue.
Yeah, that's
policy issue. But there'll be it should be open to discussion.
Sir,
the point which you said, immediately anyone gets that question. Your question is quite obvious. Obviously, it's very, when I say FRBU, if you think that all the investment should be done in such a way that the return is higher than the cost, then where will all the roads and all, do you think that they will? Now the question is, what we mean is, investment is a government portfolio. Investment portfolio should be organized in terms of both intertemporally and in terms of across different projects. That portfolio management should be done in such a way that you will be having high return, low return, but aggregatively, no more should be maintained. That is what we are aiming. That's what one should be arguing for. That is, again, it's not my contribution. It's the golden rule. This is what they are actually aiming at.
But sir, adding to this thing, see, the return from investment should be in commensurate with the investment. That won't be possible because then the public sector, everything will be out of the scene.
No.
You can't argue like that.
No,
because in certain things, education for
listen.
So
when you are talking about 100, when you are talking about 100 crore investment, 10 crore may be invested with the 25% return, and another 20% may be invested for minus return, and aggregated should be high. That's what portfolio management. This is what Dr. Abraham was telling about the KIFBI. We have got a management, portfolio management to ensure that, along with, if you add the revenue that committed revenue from the government plus the return, we are sustainable. That's what these estimate. That's their calculation. I don't want to use. I don't want to use the word.
It's not like that.
Any kind of government expenditure can be graded. In fact, no. Some of them may not be giving returns, immediate returns.
No.
But then they can be justified in terms of indirect return. There are different ways. Different ways. But the point what Anita was saying in the beginning, that is about the tax capacity of states. If government of Kerala is having the same tax base, and there are limits to which it can borrow, because because there is a disconnect between your capability to mobilize tax and your economy. Economy may be doing well, but you are not able to really tax much. So if this problem is to be fundamentally solved, then the cities and the states should have a better room for taxing. Chennai may be doing very well, the city may be doing very well, but Chennai government, I mean the Chennai City Corporation cannot mobilize money, and then Chennai will go down in terms of all the facilities. Chennai will not be doing as engine of growth of India. Chennai or Bangalore, they are not doing well because they are not able to tax. Their coffers are limited. So so the same is true of advanced states in India. So the limitation of taxing capacity should also be addressed. In the sense, this issue is a larger canvas and cannot be limited to one or two parameters and dimensions. There are other implications. Okay, Subbu wants to.
Okay, first of all, I want to congratulate Joseph sir for giving an excellent presentation. I don't know how far the comments that I'm going to make will be relevant because I'm not a constitutional expert. So the whole dogma, as I see, is India is described as a union of states. A union in which the power has been distributed, whereas the power to the monetary power resides precisely with the center. And I believe as economists, we should actually attack that point. That is the point we should attack and say that the amendment in the constitution needs to be brought in for diluting the power of the union so that the state gets more. It cannot be a system in which every time we are being told or given. No, it cannot be like you will be given. No, so we need to make the amendment in the constitution is what first I will say to address this fault lines which Sir has been bringing in, and instead of bringing in an authority, as Harilal Sir is saying, that what will be the ultimate end. So the way I see is to bring an amendment to the constitution. That is one thing. The second thing is, you already, sir, you told about Moody and the rating. So that is really a concern. But the inclusion of Indian government's bonds now in the World Bond Index, wouldn't it bring us more money from foreign players?
Can you repeat that?
The inclusion of Indian government of India bonds inside the world bond, no? Like Morgan Stanley bonds and Bloomberg bond. The inclusion of government of India's bonds would bring in more foreign players actually. Now, who is going to buy our bonds is a very different question. Who is going to hold it? 30 years down the line, what will happen is a very different thing. But it shows us as of now, there will be demand for our bonds. So I think there is some leeway, and the states can also think in same lines. Can the states can also try for getting themselves included in such bonds?
That I think RBI has to. No, we have to. That is not permitted. We went to London Stock Exchange with RBI permission. That is now landed in a lot of RBI gave, but that's not within the existing rules, I suppose. Yeah, only sovereign government can do that. But it's the first part. We all argue for. In fact, it's we are very much with you, and any piecemeal thing cannot change. But
sir, I have some points for your each fault lines. The first one, I think Professor Harilal has already mentioned that actually exactly the same thing when we attended the budget borrowing conference. There actually the Telangana Finance Secretary said the same thing. The private players are buying and they are just fleeing. Nobody's concerned about that, and public is borrowing an inch. It is creating issues and also. So my comment to the first fault line is like financial duality you talk about. Actually, there is a on budget and there is an off budget, and apart from that, government is giving a lot of guarantees to the public sector enterprises, and loan waiver. Suppose private players are borrowing, if they are not in a position to meet what government is doing, that government has to give the support as this one. So there is one more dimension which is there to adding to this duality question. And with respect to the second fault line, it's about the uniform fiscal target. I think, sir, so you arrive at the extended golden rule framework that already raised that question. And extended golden rule, in golden rule actually it's inbuilt, it is there in the original FRBM saying that 3% fiscal deficit and 0% revenue deficit. That means whatever money you are borrowing, it is completely going for the revenue deficit. So it is already inbuilt, it is there. But recently, this revenue deficit part, they have, FRO review committee has changed that thing. And so when you bring the same extended goal line, but what is the new thought process behind this extended? Already one question is there. So you are thinking that you are trying to bring the 0% revenue deficit thing again into the picture, or in some way we have to see the real revenue deficit. We have to measure so that has to be zero. Revenue deficit is something like actual deficit. The revenue deficit portion plus something else. So that something else has to be. That is something. And third point about your knowledge economy or your investment on the human capital formation. So in future, I think now this AI is going to rule, AI and robotics. So now the investment of the human capital formation will come down maybe. If in that case, how your discussion is going to lead, this fault line is going to continue. And I think there are points to add. I'm not going to extend that. So these are 3 points, and then exactly the last point. I'm going to give the next this seminar. So the last point, that is whether this 2003 golden rule can finance the 2047. From there only I'm going to start. So I think most of this point I will definitely take into consideration. Thank you, sir.
I think can you? Yeah, I think the question right.
Yeah.
Sir, it was a good presentation. I really enjoyed the way you have, brought in the issues in different fault lines. And I feel that the discussion should also be kind of more on the centralization of revenue and the structure of transfers. When you discuss about the kind of that in the beginning you were talking about achievement of Vikasit Bharat. So I feel, that part has to come in when we talk about the subnational governments, achievement of Vikasit Bharat, because we are more constrained with the revenue, especially after the GST implementation, and also with respect to the general purpose transfers by the Finance Commission as well as the discretionary transfers. So some more discussion should be also on the centralization of revenue, because we are left with only the expenditure autonomy, especially in the case of revenue expenditure, even not with the capital expenditure. So I feel that part has to be then. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your passionate presentation, as always. Given the heterogeneity and the varied political economy dynamics, it is very difficult to actually monitor the kind of fiscal discipline what we are talking about. So in that case, what is the source of this fiscal discipline that many of the scholars have pointed it out, that is it because of fiscal profligacy or the very structure of the Indian states? So in that case, do you think that do you want to see it in this way, that a number-based fiscal rule may not be sufficient to take care of this heterogeneity and political economy dynamics? Rather than, why don't we adopt best practices that define what is fiscal rule from various dimensions, and be
be it accounting practice, transparency. So if you channelize or reorient the fiscal rule to a transparency oriented or a more, accounting oriented perspective, and can we rule out this kind of a number based fiscal rule?
Sir, thank you. Now I'll take a couple of minutes to make my points because there are a lot of interesting points. So a priori, before I start my points, I want to make a statement that I'm not taking a position in defense of FRBM. So that I want to make it clear, then ask a few questions. Sir, some of them are regarding the phrases that you used and maybe going forward for publication. Some these phrases could be asked for clarification. One is you have used a very interesting term called premature state withdrawal. Uh, since we work on industry, there is a clear-cut definition for premature deindustrialization because the clear definition is well defined that an economy without reaching a certain amount of per capita income starting to decelerate. So is there any numeric metric that we can build in to, why I'm asking is this point is very important. The phrase is really important. It caught my attention and I thought if we could push forward a bit, then is there something that we can come up with? Yes.
Interesting, because sorry.
Please, sir.
From the table, from our perspective, yeah. See, many of these developed nations, over a very long period of time, their state is growing, government size is growing. So even after maturing, the size of the government is growing and growing faster than the private sector. So premature means, when are the government going to mature? That's okay. I think
so can I finish? Yeah. So second thing is very much with your idea of how countries have adopted fiscal rules. I was thinking it would be better to spend some time on when and how the countries have adopted fiscal rules. I mean, it varied from country to country. Since Harlal sir were also mentioning about rather than focusing on a static or approach to designing fiscal rules, can we have a dynamic approach? Now, I think that is where if we review, have there been incidences in other countries' context where once adopted, have they changed their fiscal rules in times or according to the need of the hour? And then what was the logic that was used by the countries which went for redesigning their fiscal rules? And can India learn anything from there? I thought that would be one point which you could use to maybe strengthen the point. The third point is about, when we are talking about fiscal rules, there are 2 points that you have brought in, and I think 2 are conflicting. I'll come and say exactly why it is conflicting. One is that we are saying that the fiscal rules are mostly targeting the stability part. Now, the underlying logic of those who designed is very clear that you have stability, it will give you growth, and growth will trickle down. Poverty and development issues are addressed. That may be the logic, but that logic has been proven wrong numerous times by now. Right? And so, if we want to focus on fiscal rules, rather than achieving stability alone, do we also want to achieve development outcomes? Let's say I would put broadly in the terminology of distribution. Okay. Now, if we want to extend the scope of fiscal rules beyond stability, how do we think about it? Because see, at the end you are saying that for Vikasit Bharat, first of all, I have a problem with the way Vikasit Bharat has been defined, although there is no standard statement about how Honorable Prime Minister sees Vikasit Bharat. Ultimately, it is going to be a per capita based measure. We know that that is not actually the qualifier for Vikasit Bharat or a developed economy just by looking at per capita, unless we have other various other dimensions of development addressed. So if we again come back and say that we have to have an FRBM or a fiscal rule which basically aids our country to march towards Vikasit Bharat, whether Vikasit Bharat is really meaning to one metric of per capita income alone, or is it really encapsulating the multidimensional development issues? So unless we settle that, should we really use the terminology called Vikasit Bharat? Because that itself, I feel, is very vague and not very clear about what they want to say. Then the other parts that you have highlighted about fiscal rules for whom? For the union or for the states? So I think that is where maybe some more, what do I say? Some more exploration into how subnational fiscal rules have been designed across the countries. Yes. No, I mean, yeah, because it's not, yes, several countries. What is the architecture? Is it that the fiscal rules really apply only for the state government, the subnational entities? Because you are saying that, center or the union government has never adhered to this fiscal rule called FRBM. And whereas the states have been continuously compelled to do it, and as we discussed, that even now they are looking serious about fiscal rules.
For example, this in the subnational kind of situation, like how do you measure fiscal capacity? Fiscal equalization is recommended to equalize fiscal capacity. But how you measure fiscal capacity? In India, we don't have a proper mechanism to do that. So we are taking per capita income to measure the fiscal capacity. But per capita income from various kinds of our research here and everywhere, it's obvious that it doesn't really reflect fiscal capacity because we don't have taxes to. Now, in other federations, they have applied different measures of fiscal capacity. So if you are taking care of fiscal capacity that way in a different kind of a measure,
Yes.
then your the rules also will be flexible.
True. Yes.
I think the point is very that I'm forgetting. We should not take, since it's informal, one take by one. See, in this particular paper, fiscal rule is not FRBM alone. Fiscal rules are rules pertaining to fiscal parameters in general revenue expenditure. We are here taking a particular case of FRBM. In FRBM, there is categorically stated what should be with respect to state, with respect to medium-term fiscal policy in their budget. There is clearly stated. There is clarity in that, because I'm fiscal rule I use, but don't think that I'm analyzing all the fiscal rules. No, I'm only taking at the queen of.
When you speak about an alternative, that's where the point by Kiran and Shruti and others. One universal rule of 3 or 3.5%, that should be changed. Then how that is going to be changed? Now, how you can dynamically
that's a kind of homework, because you need to have state specificity needs to be taken into account. That is what we are saying, that when I argue, it's not that I am saying something impossible, because that state specificity has already been taken into account by the Finance Commission when they are thinking in terms of rewards. So similarly, you do a better homework rather than, this is not a lazy job to that. See, fiscal disciplining and FRBM implementation is a serious job. You need to have, it has got its implications. So that seriousness should be meaning your homework. This is very categorically said, even with the Finance Commission, okay, we are going to reward the states, okay, 10% GDP contribution. That can be, that's the work of what Hasib Babu sitting here said that, okay, this financial committee report can be written by AI in 2 weeks time, 1 week time. So this kind of a 10% addition is an undersecretary's job. You don't need a Yale graduate, Yale professor and Columbia professor to do this 10% adding. So what I mean is that this essentially means in the modern world of data analytics, in the world of high frequency data, you can have a much more better understanding. Our own business have a much better understanding of the economy, the kind of data that they use. You should bring the reality into account. Then you articulate. The world is much more, your analytical capabilities are much more than what was designed at the time of 1951. Please make use of that. Don't jump into one ratio, get 10% easily done. But now don't take all the states as things. So that differentiability state must be differentiated. That's what I'm saying. So
yes,
so
that is my next point I was coming to.
Again, Vikasit Bharat. Because I have no definition. You have no freedom to design your own Vikasit Bharat and tell me you have not done that. I have a Vikasit Bharat saying that become a 30 trillion economy, blah, 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 blah. That I am going to that. Don't tell me that, okay, I have a Vikasit Bharat equality, Mahabali period, Onam is
no,
coming.
Sir, my
it
point,
not.
no, I'm not. No.
Certain things.
No. There is no, I mean, see, that is where, if, and I have a point with that.
Freedom to define his
Yeah. You have freedom for this particular paper. I am me.
No, it is going to be growth oriented. That is my point.
This is generally.
So that means you are basically going back to stability.
No. That growth. That growth will be there. No. That growth. That tension. No, this is precisely the point. That growth is not so much a prime concern of an economy. Japan has not grown, my dear, for the last 25 years.
Japan
reached a certain level. And for me, I need to have a 78%. And that is where the fiscal systems designed for countries which has already reached higher levels of per capita income, like $50,000-$60,000, that you can't transplant here. We need growth.
No, I think
that is where you need state to invest.
We are all driving at the same kind of destination, because Joseph is saying that we should we can discriminate when we have data.
Mm.
In today's world of digitization and all, AI and all, we can analyze each item of expenditure.
Yeah, we can do that.
And then
you will do a better job. If
it's not about who's doing a job
for environment protection.
Yeah, that's understood.
That will be counted, and that will be attributed a weight, which normally the normal calculation of fiscal deficit may not include that.
No, I take your point. When you mean by the Vikasit Bharat, if you tag that way, whether it will work. But for this particular paper, we mean this. So that we cannot, then there's a paper in itself. You have to think of a different configuration of Vikasit Bharat.
No. You mistook my point about Vikasit Bharat. I'm not talking, let's keep Vikasit Bharat aside for the time being. I'm saying that in the initial part of your presentation, excessive, emphasis on stabilization alone and designing fiscal policies or fiscal rules for stabilization alone is not going to do the job. Now, when you're talking about Vikasit Bharat, you have a clear-cut target of achieving growth. So growth is stabilization.
No. I see growth and stabilization different, because for me, growth is essentially, it's not stabilization function is different from the growth function. That's what I see.
I understood. Yeah. No. I'm not. Okay, now I'll move a point ahead.
Can you clarify why you... It's only 5:30.
One last point.
No. I think very interesting question. I think I perfectly agree with you on the second point, saying that this country is how it has evolved over time. You didn't
respond to some other questions.
There are a lot of other questions. Yeah. Actually, I think your question about deviating from the rule-based narrow, that is everything said and done. Qualitative things are very nice. But the point is that the moment, even with this kind of number, we are slipping on the slippery slope. Then you are leaving into qualitative things, it will be all the more difficult to monitor, I suppose. That because when we are talking about some monitoring, quantitative things will be much more better rather than, I perfectly see that the world that you are talking about, the reality that you are dealing with, is actually more qualitative rather than because the political things coming up. And therein also you may have to bring in quantitative thing, because I suppose I have not ready answer to that, but I think number-based fiscal rule, can we deviate from that? But maybe that you may be coming with an, ideally we should be thinking in terms of arriving a number that is reflective of the nuances that takes into account the realities of political economy dimension, those kinds of things. Maybe that, maybe. Ultimately, you have to have something to hold on, I suppose. Otherwise, I don't know. That's what I feel. And Suma, I think, as I told, I'll really take into that. Then Ranjit, okay. That loan by your first part, and third part, you are saying that again the knowledge economy. No, I think we have another I'm working on another handbook in which on our second handbook on new handbook on innovation system, wherein I think there is one section is on this, wherein the argument is that when it comes to artificial intelligence and new technology and industry 4.0. You developing countries cannot think in terms of creating new ones. But last I told about Thabo Mbeki said 2000, half the population has not made phone call when you are talking about internet. Today, the use of you should be trying to increase the proliferation, the use of AI to the extent possible, so that in the using sectors, the productivity and enhancement will happen. That will create vibrancy. You should rather, not that if you can develop it, well and good, but in that, by using also, you need some using capability. Use also need capability. So I don't think that will be coming down. The second point we'll discuss when I went out, I immediately had an answer. Now I don't have an answer. I forgot. That's what I told her. I got it. Now I don't understand that. But it doesn't happen to you people. They're all laughing at there. Now that is not justification for young people. You can't have that. Okay, I think there is something now. Yeah, I think. See that. In fact, Steffi's work here on the subnational thing. She has done a second objective of a thesis. It's especially on the subnational thing which we are talking about. We have done this quite a lot of work already here in terms of building onto that here. Okay, now I think. I don't think that I have answered the question, because you should please ask questions to you, not to me. I did the whole thing for you to find some questions and do research.
Okay, we'll have to call it a day. No, I'll say, in fact, let me take the freedom to make a final point. In fact, no, towards the end, the policy prescription you are making, I think, there somewhat flexibilities in thinking is important.
I should be careful.
Not careful. You should be more open, because I think some of these suggestions which came should be considered, because again, one cannot be very rigid in the policy solution when you make it, because the issue is very complicated. It cannot be reduced to any one number. And also, the question of fiscal deficit alone cannot be discussed. In fact, there are other aspects, like the taxing powers, and so many other dimensions are there. So when it comes to the final policy suggestion, when one will have to be a little more flexible and sensitive, and that in fact, it should be that way. That's how this paper is going to develop further. Actually.
Who will thank? I will. You will do.
Yeah.
Let me thank you. Thank you all of you.
You are going to be thanked.
Thank you very much.
So, I have not put it deliberately, because I thought very rarely we get to although we thank in every seminar we thank director for his support. I want to thank him specially today for a very different reason. In the last meeting, sir, you have to listen. in the last faculty meeting, there was this question, why is it that our seminars going down in gift? Then director stepped up and said, wait, I am going to give you a seminar. This is what I call leading by example. Thank you so much, sir, for taking this.
Today, I started at 5 o'clock my preparation of PowerPoint. My wife was actually mocking at me. What are you doing? It's 4 o'clock. When I came out, she told, okay, all the best. I never prepared this kind of working paper. I mean, wherever I go, I can speak. So I made a PowerPoint. I prepared my slide. Then I gave it to AI. AI screwed it up. It made into this thing. Then I didn't know where the hell it is going. Then I prepared mine.
That helps.
Yeah.
Sir, you are interrupting my.
Sorry. Oh, you are. He is very keen to make a critical point. I know. That's very dangerous.
So critical points are reserved outside. Yes. Thank you so much, sir. We are really happy that you have actually taken this lead. And now I expect all others people to follow the suit of director and make the seminar committee a really vibrant one. I would like to especially thank Professor Harilal for taking this time out and for joining us for a very important discussion. And I know it is close to your heart as well. And thank you for the wonderful suggestions. And thank you, Professor Srikumar Chattopadhyay. You have always been a friend of GIFT. Whenever we organize events, you come support us and bring in often ignored dimension. Sometimes without you, we would not really think of sustainability. We only think of fiscal sustainability in this boardroom, but not environmental sustainability as much as it should. Thank you, Subbu, for coming and interacting. And I thank all the participants. Today, it is quite clear that the director has got a lot of friends in this hall because that's how he measures friendship by the number of questions. Thank you once again. Thank you. And we look forward to having more. I saw. Yes. Okay. Bye-bye until we meet again.